Hi, I'm Rebecca, and I am married to Luke, and we have the 4 boys that you're always hearing stories about. And today our text is in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 23. And it's a passage that is familiar to many of us, that you've probably heard over and over again, especially at Christmas time. We read about the visit of the Magi, the escape to Egypt, and then their return to Nazareth. Our son Judah loves basketball, and every morning he wants to watch NBA highlights. And so we have this deal with him that he has to read one chapter of his Bible, and then he has to kind of report on it to us, and then he can watch the highlights. Well, this last week I asked him what he learned from his Bible reading, and he said, I didn't learn anything. I've already heard all of it before. And it was a good opportunity to talk to him about how, yes, there are things that are familiar in the Bible to us and that we have heard over and over again. But we can always be learning and growing and seeing something new in the text. And today, just because the text is familiar to us, there might even be some things that are surprising. This text is not just a picture-perfect nativity scene that we usually have in our minds at Christmas time, but there's tension and there's danger and there's a paranoid king, there's a genocide, and there is an impoverished refugee family that flees to Egypt. So in Matthew chapter 2, at the beginning of our text, we see the wise men coming from the east, and they ask, "Where is the one who has been born the King of the Jews?" And on Sunday, we heard Luke talk about 6 different myths of the Christmas story. And one of those was about the number of the Magi or wise men. While the passage says that there were 3 gifts given, we don't actually know how many people there were. Scholars say that bands of Magi's or philosophers in those days often traveled in groups of at least a dozen. And then if they brought their wives or their children or guards or even servants, that group could have easily grown to 60 to 70 people. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 3, it actually says that Herod and the whole city of Jerusalem were disturbed by their arrival. And that probably wouldn't have happened with just 3 guys. And Herod's response here is telling. He gathers all of the religious leaders because he is controlled by fear and jealousy of his throne. And he wants to know about this prophecy. He wants to know, who is this new king and where is he going to be born? And he tells them, it's because I want to worship him too. But you and I know that he didn't care about worshiping Jesus. He only cared about protecting his throne and his position. In contrast, we look at the Magi. They are outsiders to God's people. They're pagans, and they travel so many miles to come see this new baby king. And what do they do when they see him? They bow down and they worship him. They gave 3 gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And those gifts were all gifts that were fit for a king. They knew that Jesus was special. And so God uses a star in the sky to guide them to the light of the world. And they recognized his worth and they worshiped him. And then God warns them in a dream to not return to Herod. And quietly, without fanfare, they leave. And they go a different way home. And on Sunday, Luke tells us that there's 3 ways that people respond in this story, as well as 3 ways that we can respond. And the first one is with hostility. Herod had no room for anyone else. We are told that he killed his wife, sons, and other relatives. He had no room for anyone who was a threat to his throne. So it's no wonder that he would choose to have all babies, 2 years and younger, murdered. He did whatever it took to secure his position and his power. And if we're honest with ourselves, most of us can kind of be like Herod. Like, I hope you're not out there murdering people, right? But we love to be in control. We love to be in the driver's seat of our own life and calling the shots. It's hard to really fully surrender ourselves to Jesus. The second way we see people responding in this story is with apathy. In verse 3, it says that the Magi disturbed the entire city. But notice it doesn't say that anyone followed them. And who knows? Maybe they were too busy. Maybe they couldn't be bothered. Maybe they didn't see the point. And no matter the reason, they missed out. And you and I can miss out when we are distracted and we're busy or apathetic about being in the presence of Jesus. The third way that we see people responding to Jesus in this text is with joy. And in verse 10, it says that when the Magi saw the star above the house, they rejoiced with joy. And some interpretations suggest that this could be translated, that they were overjoyed to the max with great abundant joy. So let me ask you, do you have joy that the light of the world has come near? You know, I mentioned earlier that we have young kids and they love to read. And so it's not uncommon for one of my boys to bring me a book, one that we have read over and over again, and they'll sit on my lap. And it is amazing that if I have a to-do list in my head, I can read that book from cover to cover and I'll get to the end and my mind has been completely elsewhere. And that's the temptation here, right? This is a familiar text. It's a good thing. It's great that we know this story, but sometimes it can become so familiar to us that it loses the ability to affect us. And so I want to just pause again and remind you that the God of the universe, he chose to enter into our world by sending the light of the world. And just like he invited the Magi to come and see, he is inviting you and I to come and see as well. You know, before Luke and I came to PCC, we ministered at a small church in Missouri. And they used to sing hymns every week. And one of my favorite hymns that we used to sing is called Trust and Obey. Now, I know that Luke sometimes, busts out on a song when he's on stage, but I'm going to spare you from that. You don't want to hear me sing, but I'll tell you the lines. My favorite part of that song is trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. I love that phrase. Trust and obey. Trust and obey. And isn't that what we're called to do as Christians? To trust God and obey him. And that's exactly what we see Joseph doing in this text. We see that Joseph gets this dream from God, and God tells him, hey, get up, take your family, and flee to Egypt. And Joseph obeys immediately. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't debate. He just trusts and obeys. Now, it doesn't mean that it was easy or convenient. I mean, think about it. It was in the middle of the night. He has a young family. He has to totally uproot them, travel many miles, and they become refugees in a foreign land. And they didn't know how long they were going to be there. God didn't say, hey, you'll be here for this amount of time. He just says, go. And Joseph obeys. We see again in verses 19 through 23, God appears to Joseph in a dream, telling him to take his family back to Nazareth. And God speaks to him, and Joseph obeys. And I'm sure he had questions and doubts, but we don't see that. We just see him obeying. God guides Joseph into uncertainty, because it's not like Joseph got here's a 5-year plan for your family, and here's what I'm going to do. He just hears the next step. Go, flee, return. It's directional, but it's not exhaustive. The path before Joseph is illuminated, but only a little bit. I think about how a flashlight gives light. Most of us have had the experience of using a flashlight in the dark, right? It doesn't light up the whole room, but it helps you see what's right in front of you so you can keep taking your steps forward. Last year, our family decided over spring break that we were going to take some day trips to go hiking at some state parks. And I remember one particular day we went on a hike, and then at the very end of the hike, there was a cave. And, you know, my boys love to explore, but this particular time, two of my boys felt a little unsure about going in the cave. But Luke and my son Calvin really wanted to go. And so they kind of came up with this plan, like, we're going to take our flashlight, they're going to walk for maybe 10 minutes and then turn around if it just keeps going. And I just remember as I saw them walking away, because it curved around, just seeing the light disappear. And I was like, oh my goodness, I really hope that his light does not stop working while they're in the cave. But we waited, and I don't remember how long we waited, but we ended up hearing them yelling our names from above. Just I guess the cave curved around and went up, and so they had come out and they were yelling our names, and they got to see this awesome view. And I remember my two boys that didn't go with them in the cave, they were a little bit bummed because they got to go up in a high place and see an awesome view, and they missed out on this fun adventure that their brother got to have with their dad. And that's kind of like our faith, right? We don't know God's plan for us. We can't see everything that he sees. We don't know the path that we're going to have to walk, but we do have to choose to trust and obey him like Joseph did. And look what God did. You know, Joseph trusted and obeyed God, and God did amazing things through their little family. And God will do that with you too, if you choose to trust and obey. So here are some things I want you to be thinking about. You know, what are some steps that God might be leading you to take? Does he want you to get baptized? Does he want you to invite a coworker to church? Does he want you to have a hard conversation with that friend? Does he want you to start getting plugged in and serving? Does he want you to surrender an area of your life to Jesus? Whatever the next step is, God is with you, and he will continue to offer guidance along the way. You know, one of my favorite verses that my dad made me memorize as a kid is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. So as you move into conversation with your group, I hope that you will be open to God's guiding light and how you might follow him with obedience, trust, and joy.